challenge, trying to turn that off. Stop trying to understand and just trust and believe and be patient.
I offer this, maybe coming more into your divine feminine will help you to release some of that masculine need to sort of figure it out and know, right? Allowing yourself to embody trust, surrender, which are our divine feminine aspects of energy.
Welcome to the Angelic Frequency Podcast. We're your hosts, Christina Aroche.
I'm Luisa Velez. And today we had our first guest on the podcast. It was so exciting to talk to Jen and Tiffany from Sister Compass about divine feminine.
Oh my gosh, it was such an amazing conversation. I can't wait to dive in. Jen and Tiffany, founders of Sister Compass, mentor and lead women into the remembrance of their inner divine feminine magic through Reiki and sacred sisterhood, empowering them to deepen their connection to self and source and create a life of authenticity, joy, and fulfillment. Through sacred ceremony, spiritual teachings, breathwork, and direct mentorship, they guide you back to your heart. Let's dive in. Hi. Oh my gosh, you guys. So excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Hi there. So good to see you.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Yes. We're so excited to have you here. We love this topic. So we've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. So this is great. We're very happy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I know. I think Luis and I we've been talking about the divine feminine, I think, for a little while, just kind of, in our own personal experiences. And also when I mentioned, I have the best connection for us to have as guests on the podcast, referring to you two, and just having you here to be able to share your expertise and, your connection with the divine feminine. And I think the first thing that I want to know is just a little bit of understanding of how you got into the divine feminine work, because I feel like that's something that almost pulls you. It's not something that you think with your brain that's like, I'm going to do this thing. I feel like it's something that pulls you into it. So I'm curious to hear about how that happened for both of you.
Sure. I think, Christina, I think you're so right about it pulling you, because I never thought I would be like in this divine feminine space. And for me, I would say I kind of got into personal growth work about 5 years ago, which kind of led me on this spiritual path. And I met Tiffany in another personal growth group. And at the time, like, she has been doing this for a really long time, and we became really good friends. And at the same time, I was also on a spiritual path that because I was doing inner work, I was just naturally led to spirituality, where I found you just talking on Facebook one day and just felt really drawn to you. So as I started to explore and ask more questions about spirituality, and then, met up with Tiffany and started asking her questions, we just kind of like fell into this divine feminine space. I learned a lot from her. And at the same time, I started learning Reiki, and she was teaching Reiki. And so through that, we started doing this with women. We started, I learned with women initially, and now we teach Reiki with women. So we started working in women's spaces along with other women, kind of like in circle. And I started learning just a lot about what it means to be in community with other women and about the divine feminine. And that led me to other mentors that were really deeply doing divine feminine work and bringing women into ceremonial spaces and bringing through this remembrance about what the divine feminine energy is, how it's been erased throughout history, and how we're bringing it back. And so it was these little breadcrumbs for me that really kind of pulled me into like the next step and the next step and the next step. And once I was really in that space, sitting in these circles with other women, it was like a full-on like drop in remembrance that I've done this before in a past life, many past lives, and just felt so really like deeply resonant and potent. So that's a little bit about of my background, but definitely a pull to that.
Yeah, I love that so much. First of all, I just want to say again, thank you for having us. I'm so excited to have this conversation today. And when I think about my journey, well, first of all, I've been in the personal development, spiritual development space for I would say over 30 years. But if I really think about it, it goes back to when I was little, when I first started to sort of feel the resonance or the pull, as you said, Christina, to the divine feminine. And that started growing up. I was in the Catholic Church. I grew up in the Catholic Church. And I think my first connection to divine feminine came through Mother Mary, who I often say was my first goddess. And I was just so drawn to her. I felt like I could feel her immense love, and I sensed her presence with me, and that has remained with me throughout my life. She still walks with me as a guide today. And Jen always laughs. She's like, "Are you going to tell the story again?" When I was young, I could see how my devotion, I guess you would say, to the divine feminine was already present in the way that I instinctively created ritual. I used to take my Mother Mary statue and I would take her out into the woods behind my house, and I would essentially build altars out of flowers or leaves and dance and pray, completely unaware that I was tapping into something ancient and sacred, and truly just remembering something that my soul knew already. And then just as I grew up in a big Italian family, very matriarchal Italian family, and spending time with my aunts and my cousins and cooking together, I knew that I loved being in spaces where women were creating together, laughing together, crying together, sharing. And that I looked for that. I looked for that community where women could come together in devotion and in healing, share their wisdom. I craved that kind of connection. And that is what led me on my breadcrumb path in my expansion of my spirituality, studying the divine feminine across different traditions, finding different circles, moon circles, places where the embodiment of this energy was present. Just really, recognizing that. And then, like Jen said, I had always had a long time dream to create spaces for women. And I essentially was doing that. I was involved in a lot of women's circles, moon circles. I held a circle in New York City for about 13 years. And I thought that I was going to create a space, like a wellness center or something like that. But just over time, getting married, having kids, I met Jen, and when we became friends, we realized that this was something that we had to do together and create together. And that's kind of where we've led on this journey to today, if that answers your question.
Absolutely. Amazing. I love that. And it's so cool to hear about how, like, just two very different paths, how they come together, and just how when the timing is right and you're being called to it, that's when you step into that. And I just also have to say that when you shared about the Mother Mary part and you like taking your Mother Mary to the woods and things like that, I got full body chills.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, she's here. She's on my altar over here on my name, but
Yeah, I love when you tell that story because it is such a beautiful visual of how this hits our soul at different times. Like for you, you've had it since you were a child. For me, it came in like into my adulthood, and then we kind of merged. So I think that helps speak to other women who might be like, I mean, I grew up with no religion. Mm-hmm. So this was never like a thread in my upbringing. So we can kind of relate to women who do have strong religious backgrounds, women that have like never even really heard of this until now, which is really special.
That's so interesting. And I want to go back, Tiffany, to something that you just mentioned about feeling Mother Mary's presence. So I'm really curious about how people's brains work, and I ask Christina questions like this all the time. How do you see that, and what happens in your head? So I'm always curious to know, how does that happen for you? It's just really helpful for other people that are not so closely connected with this work to understand, what does it mean to feel an ascended master's presence, Mother Mary, or something like that. So what does that look like for you?
I would say first, I just want to caveat like that it doesn't have to be tied to a religion, right? That a spiritual experience is very personal and that transcends all dogma and religion. And I think that it shows up differently for everyone, as you were saying. For me, it started very young. And it was just almost as if, not like I was hearing voices, but just sort of new, like, you know, when you hear your own voice in your head, as like your intuition or your higher self, it would sort of come in like that, like whether it was angels or Mother Mary, just this knowing, this dropped in kind of knowing or feeling a sense of love, a sense of presence. And when I was younger, it was more just that. As I've gotten older, and have really like delved into this world and really opened myself up to be able to channel. Yeah, for me, it kind of drops through more as a knowing, language, pictures, that kind of thing, but really just feeling the love. It could show up in many different ways.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's different for everyone, and I really identify with your story. I also grew up Catholic and also in Latin America. So you can walk a couple blocks without seeing a Mother Mary somewhere because she's just all over the place. So it was just very prominent for me also in my upbringing. And that's how you grow up closer to those kinds of figures. And then other things are more new. So that's something that I want to ask you about. So these are the most popular divine feminine figures, but the more I study, the more I learn about others, learn about divine Sophia, learn about Isis,
Kuan Yin.
Tara. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that you start to learn down the line. How does that, so maybe for everyone listening who may not be familiar with this, can you walk us through that cosmology and who is who in a way?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's like any other, I think, spiritual frequency. I think that each of these goddesses, as you learn, comes through as a different frequency, just like when Christina channels angels, they come through as a different frequency. And for us teaching this, especially for me, I'm learning at the same time as I'm teaching. And so I think really what we do, we have a membership program. We teach a lot of this stuff. We really drop in and listen, right? In an empty present stillness about who wants to come through, right? Who wants to come through? What is the message? What is the messaging that needs to come through for the collective, for our community, for each other, for ourselves? And so it really has to do with what are the themes that are potent right now in the collective or in the community, and then somebody swoops in. For instance, we recently did a whole ceremony on Kuan Yin because the theme of deep self-love and self-compassion and the need for that, the need for these women to really tap into that was really potent and coming through. Sometimes we'll have more of that, like, you know, sensual, sexual, like, a little bit more of like that wild woman type of energy coming through in our conversations, coming through in the energy. And, you know, somebody like Isis might step forward. We talk about just the goddess in general being that representation of that higher, you know, source power and how we can connect with her to really, you know, to really empower ourselves and to really deeply feel that spiritual connection. So that's how these different, you know, kind of like who's who comes through for me. And I'll let Tiffany speak as well, because she channels a lot of these goddesses in our own community to the women. So Tiff, what do you want to add?
Well, first of all, I love the way you shared that, Jen, because it's so true. Louisa, right? I mean, there's been many traditions have honored the divine feminine throughout history in all of her many forms, right? So many ancient cultures recognized her as the source of creation, the source of wisdom, right? The source of life. And I mean, we can dip into so many different traditions, right? Egypt, Jen mentioned Isis, right? She was really revered. We have Inanna, we have in Hinduism, Shakti, all the goddesses there, right? That feminine and creative energy, the Greek and Roman traditions, right? There was, I mean, it's endless. Athena, Artemis, right? Diana, right? There's Aphrodite. Indigenous cultures long held Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, Pachamama, Grandmother Spider. There's so many living, these goddesses embodied, archetypes, the sacred force of the feminine and our understanding. And I think, like Jen was saying, they seem to step forward based on what theme we are working with, what our collective community needs. We'll talk more about our community maybe afterwards, but what the community of our sister circles need at that time. And sometimes an archetype or a goddess may step forward just in our consciousness when we are meditating on what we want to bring through, what most needs to be learned or expanded or embodied in this moment. So, and we spoke about early Christianity too, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene. There's many goddess and divine feminine in that as well. Just about every tradition. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely, it does. In my mind,
yes,
I try to understand things, I guess, from a very rational perspective. So I'm like, okay, so is Divine Sophia the feminine aspect of God? And then are all these other figures then embodiments and souls, ascended masters that come here to this plane to teach humanity a certain something, and then that energy lingers for many eons and then they keep bringing through that message, and there's that sort of structure, or it's all one and the same?
Yeah, that's such a good question. To me, when we're speaking about divine feminine, I think we are mostly speaking about the energy. So you talk about Divine Sophia, right? As an energy, an aspect of God's source, the all, right? And we all have different definitions of what that means. But to me, divine feminine energy, if we're just going to encompass the all of what that is, right? That is the wisdom, that is the creation energy. That is the intuition, the renewal, right? It's the sacred pulse of the universe. This is the birth of the universe. She's the cycles, birth, death, rebirth. I feel like that energy governs the cosmos, governs nature, governs our inner landscapes, right? And then there's these aspects, right? It's like somebody explained to me once, they were talking about how to explain what God is and what we are. And they said, imagine God being the ocean or goddess or source, whatever you want to call it. And then you took a spoon out of that ocean, and that was you, an individualized aspect of the all. And so I think about these archetypes or these goddesses or these ascended masters as aspects of the all, just as we are. But perhaps their, whether you want to call it a soul mission, is to, let's say, teach humanity and come through like ascended masters, right? Ascended masters were beings that actually incarnated on this planet as humans, but then a part of their soul mission or their soul purpose is to an aspect of their soul to stay and help teach humanity about what they were bringing through. So does that help quantify it a little bit?
Yes, it helps a lot, and it also opens another question around.
It's full of questions, you guys.
I have many questions. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to let you talk, Christina, and the experts have a conversation. But an aspect of the soul remaining here, and then the other goes where? What happens?
That's the big question, isn't it? That we're all wondering.
Where do we go? Like, I don't know. Is there like a vacuum? Like
an aspect of my soul can remain here forever, or as long as it takes, and then the other just keeps moving up to source? Or that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I have an opinion or like a belief around it, but I want to hear if you guys want to have anything that you want to share around that too. You want? Yeah.
Rephrase the actual question.
To me, it's almost as if you're telling me that a soul can kind of divide itself and just remain here, like the Mother Mary energy that remains with humanity. And then the rest of her soul is just out there doing other things or incarnated somewhere else, like that.
Yeah, so I think I understand what you're saying, and I'll take a stab at it because obviously none of us really truly
Of course, this
truly
is
know.
all
This is what
just
makes it so fun for us to talk about. Be like, this is what I think.
Yeah, but what I was just going to say about that is if we believe that we are multidimensional beings, right? I
yes.
believe that we are multidimensional, and I believe that the soul is so vast, something we can't, it's very hard to kind of integrate into both our human brain and just our small little human body.
Yeah.
And that as us being multidimensional beings, that I do believe, and Christina, I'd love to hear what you have to share, or Jen, that yes, there is a part of our soul that can be acting on a mission. Energy never dies, right? If we are made of energy, it never dies. It cannot be created or destroyed. It's just transforming into other energies. So there's an aspect of our energy that could be, let's say, here in the 3D on Earth at this time. There could be another aspect of our multidimensional being that's in another star system. I mean, we could get really woo-woo here, but that is the way that I see it, especially if we also move into what is time. Is time even really real or linear? So that's how I see that aspect, Louisa, and I'll keep it a little short. Christina.
I love that so much. This is so mind-blowing and amazing.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty much similar to what I was going to say. I kind of think of it as almost when a soul lives a certain lifetime, it's like there's an energetic imprint that stays, and then the soul continues on, but that energetic imprint has always is there. And so that's why now, like Mother Mary, for example, we will use her, like her, that energetic imprint has stayed and will continue to exist in the energy, which is why she's so present. We can connect with her, etc. But I do also believe that, like Tiffany mentioned, like that soul can continue on, and because of that multi-dimensional aspect, it can move on and do other things in other places, or maybe on the earthly plane, or wherever it might be. I think of it too, like, for example, I don't know why this example is coming up. It's kind of random, but I'll just share it, is that I really looked up to Dr. Wayne Dyer. Like, I read some of his books. I really loved what he had to share. And when he passed, like, I was so sad. I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I've never even met him or talked to him. I just loved his books and his talks. And I felt so sad. And then a few years later, I remember feeling his energy and his spirit being present, almost like coming through for me, like as a guide, but not like a personal guide, just coming in to share something with me for my journey. And then I was thinking about him, and I think the same with other people too who have passed. And I think, well, we can connect with their spirit and their energy as we knew them, like Dr. Wayne Dyer, like how we knew him as that person in that lifetime. But I'm sure that his soul has continued on, and whatever his next assignment is, whether he's now still in spirit form doing whatever he's doing, or maybe he's reincarnated back, like who knows what he's doing. But I do believe that can, like, that imprint of who he was as Dr. Wayne Dyer stays, but then his soul continues on to do whatever, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I think the more we try to analyze it as humans, the more cans of worms open. And I just say, just like, for me, it's just like all different frequencies. Like, I'm calling in Mother Mary, or I'm calling in Mary Magdalene, or I'm calling in Yeshua. And they were people that actually existed here, considered ascended masters, but it's their frequency that, like, I'm calling in for me. And they could be, Archangel Michael, for instance, can be with me. He can be with everybody at the same time. It's like, I think it's so hard for our human brain to put into, like, rational, this is how it works, right? It's so much more vast. So I don't even try to figure it out, because it gives me, like, I can't. So I'm just like, I'm just going to accept it.
Right?
Yeah.
That's faith. Having faith and trust, and suspending some of our human mind that needs to know the answer, the logical answer.
That's my challenge, trying to turn that off. Stop trying to understand and just trust and believe and be patient. But yeah, it's wild to think, even what are we doing in other dimensions? Like, what are we up to out there?
Yeah.
right
Well,
now.
We're still
Louisa,
doing right now.
I offer this. Maybe coming more into your divine feminine will help you to release some of that masculine need to sort of figure it out and know, right?
Thank
Allowing
you.
yourself to
Yes.
embody, you use the words yourself, trust, surrender, right? Which are our divine feminine aspects of energy.
That's right.
That's
Yep.
what it's all about. And I guess that's a great way to introduce this next part of the conversation. How do we embody that energy and make that part of our day-to-day life, and how do we practice that?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think so many women in this culture that we have of like go, go, go really struggle with, first of all, like what is divine feminine energy? What does it mean? And there's all kinds of misconceptions about feminine energy to begin with. But this is so prevalent that we went on to like create this whole little free pamphlet for women to really tune into what are just simple ways that we can embody our divine feminine energy on a daily basis. And so some of those are, for instance, giving ourselves the time and space to rest and to really tune into our own soul and to our own heart. And rest is not looked upon as something that's, productive or, we feel so much guilt around just resting, especially if we have busy life, a family, we're always on the go. So rest is a big one, I think, for us and in our community, really teaching women how important it is to tune into their heart and their soul, give themselves the time and space to just be still in rest, because that's when the intuition comes in, which is another aspect of divine feminine energy. Instead of trying to do, we need to come more into just being and allowing our channel to be still so that we can be receiving messages. The receptivity is a divine feminine quality. We are the receivers of source. And so we cannot receive if we're always on the go, go, go. And tuning into our body. I know for me, I'm oftentimes in my mind and not in my body. So I've learned a lot in my journey, in my divine feminine journey, to really tune into my body. What is my body telling me? Moving my body, expressing through my body, through dance, through somatic work, through just movement is a big one for us. We do a lot of dance to really bring that energy through and get into our femininity. And then a third one I'll just mention is being in nature is another big one, which is easy to do every day. Paying attention and being aware, right? Being present and aware of like the nature around us. It's everywhere. But when we are just going, we tend to not see it, or we're not intentionally putting ourselves in nature to be in that energy and to kind of bring through more wisdom that way, and to tune into the trees and the flowers and the plants and the animals. So those are a few ways that we can embody just in everyday life. And Tiff, what do you want to add, love?
Well, first of all, I love everything that you just shared. Those are such like significant and yet simple ways that we can really begin to access this energy within ourselves. But I think what I wanted to really presence or really anchor in was this idea that Jen touched on about, we live in a world right now that prioritizes masculine energy, and not necessarily divine masculine, right? More of even actually a wounded masculine energy. And we've been so deeply conditioned to not recognize our femininity or our feminine energy as the gift that it is, because those gifts have been diminished, dismissed, right? Due to all of the conditioning. And it's led us to unconsciously internalize the belief that feminine qualities are less valuable and less effective than the more, like Jen was saying, outward, go, 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 dominant, action-oriented traits of the masculine. So I feel like it has to start there. It has to start with, well, it doesn't have to start there. We can do all the things Jen was saying, but a big anchor is really creating the space to first reclaim and honor ourselves and the qualities of ourselves, to see the gifts that the feminine brings, the collaboration energy, the empathy, right? The openness over rigidity, right? The ability to listen deeply, to trust our intuition. All of honoring the feminine means to honor ourselves, which makes space for bringing this energy back into balance. And we could do that all in the ways that Jen was talking about, whether that's, taking space for ourselves, just time to stop the going and make space. And it could be as little as 5 minutes, right? To just center in our heart, ask ourselves, what do I need, right? What does my body need right now? What does my heart need? And to listen to that. She talked about rest. Seeing rest as something that's restorative instead of feeling guilty over it or feeling like we need permission to do it. I think there's also just practicing our intuition, practicing listening to our intuition when we get those hits of we're about to walk out the door. Should I take the umbrella? Even though it's a sunny day and you get that hit, follow it. Right? Practice following those little hits that you get all day long about your intuition. Maybe I should take this route instead of that route today. And when we start to live more by just trusting ourselves, the inner messages that come up, I think that we'll start to remember a little bit more. And so I just really wanted to anchor in seeing ourselves first, shifting the perspective that we've been so conditioned to believe that the feminine is somehow less than, and actually really seeing the gifts that energy brings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that. And a question that popped up for me as you were sharing that is I'm curious to know how you guys view the balance between divine masculine and divine feminine. And I'm curious how you view it specifically in the sense within our own self. Is it something where you see, if we're called to the divine feminine and expressing ourselves in the divine feminine, and therefore the masculine aspect, it's something that's more, external, that is supporting us to be in our full expression? Or is there a time and place where, in this moment, I need to be more in my divine masculine to get something done, but then I need to balance that out with, taking some time to rest in order to be in my divine feminine? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you view that balance?
I'm going to just start this and then I'm going to pass it over to Jen because I know she's been doing some stuff with that lately, but I just want to share, we have both energies within us. We have masculine and feminine energy within us, and it is an energy. They are energies. And I really believe that they were meant to work together. If you think of like the yin and yang symbol, how they kind of flow into each other, I believe it's the same thing for the masculine and the feminine, and that we have been separated. Those energies have been separated. And that's why we see so much discordant energy within the masculine and the feminine energy at this time. It's why the pendulum has been sort of swinging. There was a time it was more matriarchal, then patriarchy came into the picture. And we're seeing this unbalance because they were meant to be integrated, not within ourselves and then out within the balance of the world, men, women, culture. And so the divine masculine, not the wounded masculine, which is what I think we see, which is what patriarchy is. Patriarchy is a system of the wounded masculine. That is not the divine masculine. And that hurts men too. So Jen and I always say this is not about a who's better or one better than the other. Our goal, our part of our mission is really bringing those into balance together, so that all people can rise together into our wholeness and be integrated, because that's really what the earth needs at this time. And the divine masculine energy that lives both within us is, we absolutely need that it's conscious action, it's sacred protection, it's structure and stability, right? It's discipline and devotion, commitment. There's so many beautiful qualities of the divine masculine. It's integrity and honor, and how, leadership, leading ourselves, right? So Jen, I'm going to pass it over to you. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I love everything you said. And this is such a big part, I think, of being somebody that, is bringing the divine feminine in, because I think, like Tiffany, I'm so glad that you did presence that aspect. We need to be aware that we've been conditioned out of our divine feminine in order to kind of get back into it. Because if we're not seeing the internal conditioning that's happening when we're talking ourselves out of bringing the umbrella or the rest, then we're never going to be able to overcome those patterns and overcome those conditionings. So that was a big piece, I think, in learning and seeing and having the awareness behind that. And yes, one of the things that we teach a lot is that divine feminine does not mean feminist in terms of the masculine is bad, in terms of patriarchy being like bad men or anything like that. We are working to bring the masculine and feminine energies back into balance, both internally and on a collective level. And I've been really like doing deep divine feminine work for the past few years. And recently I started learning more about what does it feel like to be embodied in the divine masculine internally. Like we can see divine masculine men out there in the collective, but what does it feel like internally for that divine masculine energy to come through? And one of the things that helped was to take that energy outside of myself and to picture it as if it was an actual person. So the divine masculine qualities are things like trust, setting boundaries, getting the things that need to be done, even when it's uncomfortable, integrity, telling the truth. And so I've started noticing how are these energies playing within me, right? So for instance, if a boundary needs to be set, if you have to have a difficult conversation with a coworker, a spouse, anybody in your life, the feminine, they want connection. They don't want to have those hard conversations. So I've been calling on my divine masculine who coming in and he's like, no, like we need to set this boundary. Like I'm going to step forward now and take care of this for us. And that divine masculine energy who is honest and in integrity and can express and relate to people in a way that does bring connection and doesn't, is not authoritative, but also is very clear. Right? The divine masculine is clear. He doesn't beat around the bush. He's direct, and that's hard for the feminine. So our divine masculine energy comes in to have those direct communication conversations. Say for instance, to honor our own inner boundaries. If we are really tired or we really need rest, and we said, well, I'm not going to go out tonight. I really need to stay home and rest. And then a friend calls asking us to go out, and we're like, oh, okay, maybe I'll go. It's the divine masculine energy that comes in and says, no, like we need to rest, like if you take it outside of yourself and you told your partner, I want to stay in tonight. And then he came and said, oh, well, I just made these plans for us, so let's go. That wouldn't jive. So we have to lead ourselves, and bringing that masculine energy in for me and seeing it, as kind of the balance to my divine feminine energy lately has really been beautiful. And I haven't done that type of work before. And it's really helping me to kind of see and just to kind of stay in balance. So I'll just stop there for a minute. Does that help, Christina?
Yeah, that helps so much. I love that example too of bringing that masculine kind of outside of yourself to just the way that you illustrated that was so perfect and so beautiful. And I feel like you just gave me a really tangible way to be able to practice that with myself and to understand where is it that my divine masculine is coming in versus where is it that my divine feminine is coming in. So thank you for that. That was amazing.
Yeah, you're welcome. And one other thing I just wanted to mention is, the divine feminine, she's kind of like the leader. She's the one that's receiving the messages from source. The divine masculine is there waiting to carry out the orders, right? He is in service. And so we allow ourselves to receive our hits, our intuitive hits. And then the divine masculine's there. He's like ready to serve us, right? So that's one of the ways that they play together. And I do think personifying him outside of ourselves and her, we can kind of get a better idea of these two energies individually so that we can merge them internally.
That's so useful to think about it like that and to integrate that into your life. I'm wondering, and maybe this is tied to the work that you do with your communities, because we do want to talk about that, going back to the different aspects and archetypes, because many people have affinities with different, whether it's Mother Mary or whoever that looks like for people. How do you work with them, and how do you help how do you use them to advance on this journey, and what are some rituals or things that we can do in our everyday life to honor that energy?
I guess similarly to what we were speaking about before, right? And Jen was just talking about, if we're really clear and having an understanding of what feminine energy is, what masculine energy is, and what they sort of govern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we were just talking about, Jen was just talking about the masculine governing like leadership, sacred protection, right? Logic, right? Discernment, integrity, protection, clarity. And then the feminine sort of governs wisdom and intuition and creation, collaboration, empathy, magic, right? The weaver. When we sort of have a clearer understanding of what those energies are, we can then call upon the divine in whatever forms that either we're used to, or we can just, whether it's angelic, whether it's an ascended master, and call upon the aspects that they govern. Like we know, for example, we used the example of Kuan Yin before. She governs the aspect of compassion, like radical compassion and self-love, right? So if that is something that we need to work with, or we notice that we are struggling with, we may call upon her and work with her, meditate with her, do some ritual. One of the things we'll talk about is sacred ceremony in a second. And to help us to embody and integrate compassion and self-love. Mm-hmm. We may need a divine masculine aspect to help us with that. Perhaps we need someone like Yeshua, right? Master Yeshua to come in and teach us about love, and that we are an aspect of God ourselves, and that that worthiness lives just because we are, right? And maybe that helps us understand and have some more self-compassion and self-love. One of the things that we do in our communities, one of the ways that we do this is through sacred ceremony or sister circles. And that is as old as time when it comes to the divine feminine. And the divine feminine has been sitting, in circles for, I guess, longer than we can even go back to, because so much of it was passed on orally, and it's really been in just about every single tradition. And we came together in circles throughout time as women because we were, especially in ancient times, we were the healers. We were on the councils of spirituality. We were the midwives. We were perhaps the medicine women, right? The mothers. And we would come together in these circles, whether it was for rites of passage, whether it was for collaboration, decision-making, celebrations, all of these things. And we did, whether it was nature, right? All the earth-based traditions, celebrating nature, working cyclically with the earth. And then we would work with these divine entities or aspects of light to bring through what we were trying to learn or expand on this planet. And we do sacred circle. We sit in circle in our communities, both on the retreats that we lead, and we also have an online community, sisterhood community, where once a month we do have sacred ceremony. And it's really the beautiful aspect of circle is that there is no hierarchy, that we sit in a circle because we are all at the same level, and every woman there brings her own, what we call medicine, her unique frequency, her own frequency to the circle. And that's the medicine. And when we are in safe spaces like that with women who are loving and supportive and open and really embodying more of their divine feminine aspects, not their wounded feminine. We could talk about the sister wound at another time. But when we are there doing that deep work, we are unlocking the frequencies to our remembering, the frequencies to our intuition, our magic, our gifts. And when we work with these divine beings, or within just the witnessing of the sisterhood of each woman's frequency frequency, we are able to expand. Jen, did you want to add to that? And I don't know if that answers your question, Louisa. It's kind of as one of the rituals, I think one of the most important rituals that we do to sort of embody the divine feminine and work with these higher aspects of being.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sitting in sacred ceremony is probably the number one ritual or practice that brings me the deepest into my divine feminine remembrance. And it was like that since the first time I really sat in a ceremony like that. It really is a technology. It's like a technology, like Tiff was saying, it's the energy of all the women together do create a specific medicine that permeates throughout the whole ceremony. And it's a really beautiful energy with all of those women there to really feel into that. And on our retreats, we bring Reiki through, which is an energy healing, as a way to really have a tangible way that women can feel their own inner magic.
Yes.
And so I love all of that. And then for me, just speaking on the ritual piece. So when I think of ritual, I think of what are the things that we're doing kind of over and over again or in certain steps, and individually having a sacred practice of some sort every day is probably as important for me as being in ceremony, frequently. And so in my sacred practice, as I've learned more about this over the years, I've created kind of a group of beings that I call in every day, right? I call in my angels, I call in my higher self, I call in Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Yeshua, and it's become it's just almost like a script in my head, and they all come in. And so the more I do that over and over again, we call it our family of light. They're there every time. And they're there in ceremony with us. And so doing that over and over, you get to feel their different frequencies. You get to begin to call on them individually throughout your day, or if you're going through something specific that you need a certain, energy for. And so that practice, because it is a practice, I had a lot of chatter when I first started. Like, am I doing this right? Am I making it up? It's really about a surrender to all of that and letting something else come through. And that takes practice. So doing this over and over again, opening my energy channel, practicing Reiki, these are all ritualistic things that have helped me kind of really embody more of my divine feminine.
That's so interesting. I love it.
So amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
No, but I was just wanting to share that when you were talking about the circle, and I just started get tingly all over, and something something was calling to me there. So that's very, very powerful. And I feel like I need that. I want that.
I was just going to say, Louisa, that's something we hear often, and it happened for both Jen and I as well when we sat in circles for the first time. There is a remembrance, and I believe that even as we were just speaking about it, right, the energy is coming through, and you're having your own remembrance of what that was like to be in sacred circle with other women and other sisters. That craving, that pull is very real. It's so rooted in us. Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting how visceral that was, and just physically feeling like I need that, I want that, and almost remembering like I've been there and I want to go back. That was beautiful. Yeah,
we've had women actually cry and say, I feel like I'm finally home. We've felt that, like there's this homecoming.
Yeah. That's incredible, because I'm in the same boat as Louisa, where I think this was the first time hearing you guys talk about it in this way, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need this. I want this. Like, not having really thought too much about sitting in circles and what does that mean? Like, I've heard about it, seen it, thought that's really cool. But this was the first time where I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like I need to experience that. And I was also going to say that you talking about this also answered a question that I had, I think earlier on, that I was thinking, okay, I'm going to ask that at some point about what does it mean to sit in ceremony, and what does that look like? What does that feel like? And I think for me, there was some intuitive knowing of it's a remembrance. And then you were literally saying that it's a remembrance. You start to remember. And so I felt that, and that was just amazing. So good.
I love that so much. And it also just reminds us again of another core tenet of feminine energy is community. We are communal beings. We are collective, right? The masculine energy is more autonomous. Not that they don't need others, but it is a more autonomous energy. The feminine energy is a more collective, collaborative energy. And that's why we naturally come together, even if it's something as much as like, I really need a girls' night out, right? I really need my girls, right? We crave that. We need that together. And especially in these times where we are no longer living intergenerationally in communities where, you know, your sister's across the street and your best friend is next door and we're helping each other, right? Taking a village. We don't get that anymore. We're so much more isolated. And we feel that. We don't even know how deeply we feel that. Like you just said, Christina, like, oh, I need that. I need my sisters. I need to feel that feminine love and support that we really have the ability to give to each other.
Yeah.
That's so incredible. And so on that note, I want to ask you to share, you know, for anyone who's listening right now and who's thinking about, you know, for one, how can I start a ritual? Like Jen was mentioning, having a ritual at home. Like, how does one start? I can imagine it's probably some intuitive process, but if you could share some steps as to how someone can start a simple, basic ritual for themselves at home to start to develop that connection. And then if you want, then you can flow into also if people are like, okay, sign me up for the circle, like the ceremony, like where do I go? What do I do? If you want to then share about that aspect too.
Sure. So I'm trying to think how when I first started doing like a daily sacred practice, it's a commitment. So it's an intention to try to do this every day, but also not judge myself if I skip a day. And one of the first things I had to figure out was when is the best time of day to do this? For some people, it might be when I can fit it in. For me, it helped to do it at the same time each day. And I loved to do it in the morning before my family got up. Before like the sun was even out, like I like to sit in the dark and like just be in quiet, like in the dark. So it was a commitment because I would get up before my kids at like, 5:30, and it was hard to get up, but once I was in it, it felt so good. So just lighting a simple candle to start, creating a comfortable, what we call like sacred space. And this can just be like a chair with a blanket and one little candle, somewhere that's quiet, that feels good, that feels like cozy to you, and where you're not going to be interrupted. And then, I ritualistically, I like to do a little clearing. So maybe with like a little sage, just kind of like clearing myself. And then it's really about being with yourself. So the way that I do it is, now that I've been trained in Reiki, I use that energetic modality to really guide my daily practice, which involves putting on some quiet music, kind of getting myself into a meditative state, closing my eyes, really grounding and being present like in that moment. And then hands on the heart and opening up my energy channel, and opening up what we call our Reiki channel, and then calling in all of my beings, to be with me. And then sometimes just sitting, even if it's just 5 minutes in meditation. If you're new to meditation, a few minutes a day to start is perfect, because it's going to start to build that muscle. And then, so that's how I started. And as you do the practice, you can add in more things that you like or switch things out. Other things I love to do during my sacred practice, pull cards. I use Christina's deck all the time, oracle cards all the time. So meditation, pulling cards, sitting in empty presence, journaling, anything that comes through, or just free writing is also a really beautiful practice to do, just kind of being with yourself, being in nature. In the summertime, I'll go outside, I'll watch the sun come up, I'll, sit next to a tree. And as little as 5 minutes a day can really just sets the tone for the rest of the day. So those are a few of my kind of like beginner steps. And I want to hear, Tiff, what you have to say too.
Well, sure. Mine are similar, but I'm a night owl.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of mine at night. I do something in the morning every day just to be intentional and sort of set in and click in. But my longer displays of devotion typically happen at night, because that's when my essence feels more grounded and able and has the time freedom to do it. So I love what Jen said before. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be whatever works for you. We would never want that to be a deterrent to someone taking the time to just be with themselves. And so I'm not going to repeat. I do a lot of the same things that Jen does, but I'm also a little bit more movement oriented. Jen's a more still person. I'm a little bit more like movement person. And so I was a dancer. I will put on music. I will sometimes just dance in like just full out freedom, but it's with intention of like, I am like, just connecting to my joy or connecting to the music, letting that frequency move through me. So there could be something like dancing, walking. I have a dog that requires a lot of walking. I will take him for a walk in the woods, but it's intentional. Like leave the AirPods at home or put on some cool music and immerse yourself with that intention to connect to your inner being or source, whatever it is for you. So those are some other types of practices besides just a strict kind of meditative practice. Anything that really brings you joy with intention, right? That you can really sit and be intentional that this is for you, a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, but doing it with intention, slowing yourself down or giving it to yourself as a gift. And I love what Jen said too about here's the divine masculine, that consistency. There's something about that devotion that really does build where it starts to expand. You feel things start to shift and expand. So
yeah, gratitude practice is another thing that just came in, bringing in gratitude. And I love what you said about intention and devotion. You can do whatever you want, but when you have the intention, like that is the key. That is the key. And then the devotion being, just a commitment to doing this, because it's every day we have to choose it. We have to choose this, but it's worth it. It really is.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be long.
I love those words of devotion and, commitment, because I feel like that changes the energy behind the action. It's kind of like if you think about mindlessly just doing it because you feel like you should versus I'm doing it out of a space of devotion because I just feel committed to this and I desire this. And it's like a different experience, I feel, even if you're doing the exact same thing,
Yes. And I love what you said about like having an awareness around why we're doing this, because if we don't have that, we're just going through motions because we think we should. But you'll start to see a difference when you don't do a practice. If you do one and then you don't do one, it does feel different. And to quote Wayne Dyer, he said, we don't get what we want, we get what we are. So it's about what we're being. The energy, the frequency that we're in throughout the day changes our experience of it. So we get to choose what that experience is going to be. And that sacred practice really just sets the tone for me. And that's my motivation, my driver behind doing it.
I love that so much. And you made me just think, Jen, just another little sacred practice that people can pepper into their lives. And I might have mentioned this a little bit before, is just stopping before you do anything, before you get on that meeting, before you, whatever, transition from work to cooking dinner for the kids or whatever, just to take, even if it's a minute, to even just place your hand over your heart or your lower belly and just literally touch your body and ground yourself and take a couple of breaths with that intention and devotion, or to even just ask yourself, what do I really want in this moment? Or what do I really need in this moment? And get into that little practice before, like you said, Christina, we mindlessly go through the day, just checking things off. What if we brought just those questions before we did something? How would that start to shift the way that we do things? That's being more in our feminine energy.
So incredible. I love this so much. I want to hear about ceremony and circle, but first I'm going to hand it off to Louisa. I feel like she has something to share, maybe a quick.
No, I just wanted to go back to the circle too. I'm like, tell me all about the circle. I need to know more about this.
Yes. Tell us about what you beautiful ladies do to support other women in coming into the divine feminine through circle, ceremony, retreat, all the beautiful things that you offer.
Sure.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the main things that we do is our divine feminine Reiki retreats. And so this is a way for women to get away with other women in a specific container, and we're teaching Reiki. They're getting Reiki training, which again, we utilize as a modality to bring them into their divine feminine inner magic. And it's a tangible way for them to experience their magic. They're also getting certified in Reiki. But we do this by also weaving in sacred ceremony during these retreats, where we're sitting in circle with each other, where we're doing hands-on Reiki with each other. And in circle, we're kind of bringing in teachings from Reiki, and it's all kind of woven together. So they're getting the experience of the divine feminine in person. They're also bringing in their own healing abilities. Reiki, we teach in 3 parts: Reiki level 1, 2, and 3, or Reiki master. And so somebody that's just starting out would start in Reiki level 1. We're actually doing a Reiki level 1 retreat coming up this fall. And so that's one of the main things that we do. Tiff, I'll let you talk about anything you want to add to that, and then about our membership.
Sure. Yeah. I think in general, our mission is that, we like to bring women together to help them to feel empowered in their own skin, to deepen their connection to themselves and to their spirituality. I also am a life coach and counselor. And one of the biggest themes that I see is this lack of self-worth and self-love, and really bringing women back into their self-love, back into their authenticity, expanding their spirituality, discovering their divine feminine magic. And like Jen was saying, we do that through both the modality, all the things that we talked about today, and Reiki, and our retreats. And then we also mentor and lead a community of women, of sisters. We call ourselves Sister Compass, and our community is called More Magic. And the tenets of that community are: be you, belong, be magic. And be you is really about that self-love and bringing yourself back into your authenticity, your empowerment, your aligned, integrated self. And then belong is belonging to a space of like-minded women who are loving and kind and fierce and supportive and have your back. And it's a space where nothing is off the table. We can bring the range of our beautiful feminine emotions and in a higher skill set way, and do the work together. Really do the work together, leading each other. Jen and I are the mentors, but the women also really do lead each other. And we do that in Sacred Community online, in our membership community, More Magic. And then the Be Magic is helping people to come back, helping women to come back to their magic, to the mystery, to the play, to their intuition, to their gifts. And we do that. We meet 4 times a month. And we do sacred ceremony. We do embodiment practices like breath work. We do Q&A sessions. We do something called Sister School, where we teach on a spiritual subject, whether it's connecting more to your spirit guides, or the use of crystals, or we just did something on the I Am Presence and the Violet Flame, right? And we're just expanding spirituality and exploring that. And then we also do something called Full Moon Spotlight, which we love so much. And that is where the full moon, we spotlight the sisters. That is their time to either come in and lead from their gifts, whether somebody wants to lead a meditation or a practice, or show us a piece of art, or whatever it is that they bring. And it's also their space to just really just connect, check in together. What are we working on? What's coming up for you? And we just witness each other. There's no advice giving. We witness and hold the space to be women in the modern world, holding our spirituality, making our way through life. Jen, did I leave anything out?
No, I think, and then we are connected with them through a messaging app as well. So they have direct connection to us to ask questions and to process anything that we do live together, over the computer. But it's really been our greatest joy to bring women into a remembrance and have them experience like what you guys experienced, like, oh my gosh, I want this, I need this. And then to get them into circle and to see their progress, because I know that's how it was for me and that's how it was for Tiff. And so we want to just gather as many women as we can to also have this experience, because the whole point of this is to rise up together and come into our full empowerment as we kind of usher in, higher consciousness and this new earth energy.
Yes.
So,
yes. And the transformations, honestly, that have been occurring are like mind blowing, even to Jen and I, to witness, the unfolding. We're growing, they're growing. So much transformation is occurring for people in the way that they are meeting their daily lives, how they bring this aspect of themselves to their daily lives, what's being healed. It really is quite beautiful. And that can be as simple as, how you show up to talk to someone in the grocery store, to raising your kid, to starting your own business, to whatever it is. It's really been a beautiful community.
I love it so much because it feels, if it is doable, it feels like something that I can actually get done. When you talk about these big concepts and divine feminine and this and that, it feels so far removed from our human self. So just hearing you talk about all these practices and circle and everything in such a way that it makes it real, tangible, and attainable. So it's like we can do it and we can be it every day. And that's so important. So I think I definitely want circle. I'm there, sign me up. But I think for a lot of people, just knowing what the little rituals in their life can look like, it's going to be really helpful too. Just like you would do with angels, just like you would do with anything else. It's just help people bring this into their lives in a way that makes sense for them so that they can call on all these energies to just help them live a better, more connected life. It's great.
And Louisa, what's coming through as you say that is, it is time. Like, it's time. We need this. We need each other. It's time for the divine feminine to rise. It's not a trend. Some people are calling it a trend. It's not a trend. It's a necessity for our evolution as humanity. We are being called. You're feeling the call yourself today. We are being called individually and collectively to step into this higher consciousness so that we can integrate the feminine and the masculine. And like Jen had just touched on, be able to bring this awakening, this earth consciousness, this 5D unity consciousness that we are moving towards at this time.
Yeah, we're really at a coordinate point with forward motion around this. Like, this is kind of something I feel like it's been set in motion, and like we're at like this cross point, we're at this coordinate point where this is like coming online full force, and I'm just excited to be here during this time.
Me too.
And like on the ride. Yeah.
Amazing. It's so exciting to be calling this work, and there's so much work to do, but definitely you're doing some amazing stuff with your community.
Yeah.
And
Thank you. So are you guys. You're doing it too. We're all doing it in our different ways, right?
Yeah.
This is it.
Yep. And when you're doing it with somebody, with like your feminine partner, like, it's so good. It's just we're so much better together than alone.
I know. It's
so
magical. It's great.
It is magical. It certainly is.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. You completely answered my question before I asked the question, which I was going to say, what parting message do you have about the divine feminine for all of our listeners? And you answered it. So
yes.
That was incredible. So beautiful. I really feel, for anyone listening today who has felt that same way that Louisa and I have felt, like this, like calling of, oh my gosh, I need this, definitely connect with Jen and Tiffany. We are going to have all of the links and resources and all of the things of how you can get in touch with them, how you can learn more from them, with them, in circle with them. All of the things are going to be in our show notes. So go check that out below the episode. And I would love to hear from our listeners. You can comment on Spotify, by the way, if you're listening on Spotify, or also on YouTube. And I would just love to hear from those of you, men, women, anyone who's listening. What was your biggest takeaway from this episode today? What are you committed to doing in supporting your divine feminine? Share it in the comments below. And like I said, connect with our beautiful sisters here through the links that we have in the show notes. So thank you, both of you, once again, for showing up today and sharing. It was such a beautiful conversation.
Thank you both for giving us the opportunity to be able to come, be with your energy, talk about this. Like, it's our favorite thing to do. So thank you.
Yes, we're so honored to be here. You know, Christina, I feel like you're such a big part of my journey. The work that I've done with you has been so profound, and I'm just so grateful to have you in my life and to have, you know, opportunities like this, and that we're like, you know, we're doing it together. So, and Louisa, it was amazing to be with you today as well. I had so much fun.
So much. I learned so much, and I can't wait for all the things that we're potentially going to do together and working with you in the future. So
I love that.
Yes.
That idea.
particularly all over. So nice things are coming for sure. And the pull is very strong. So thank you so much. It was a wonderful episode and we learned a lot. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Bye.
Bye, everyone.